The sound of breaking glass echoed through the empty parking garage as Marcus lunged forward, catching his boss just before he collapsed onto the pavement. The company's most important client contract was tucked under his arm, and tomorrow's presentation, the one that could save or sink the entire firm, was less than 9 hours away. Marcus had a choice to make, and in that split second, his decision would alter the course of both their lives in ways neither man could possibly imagine. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected kindness and life-changing consequences, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more compelling human stories that remind us how a single moment of compassion can transform everything. Marcus Jenkins hadn't planned on becoming a hero that night. At 34, his life revolved around two things: his 7-year-old daughter Lily and keeping his job at Westbrook Financial to provide for her. Since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, he'd been walking a tightrope, balancing single parenthood with the demands of a cutthroat corporate environment under the tyrannical leadership of Richard Westbrook. Richard was notorious throughout the company for his brilliance in business and his equally impressive capacity for alcohol. Most employees kept their distance, but as Richard's executive assistant, Marcus didn't have that luxury. He'd learned to navigate his boss's mood swings, cover for his absences, and clean up his messes, both literal and figurative, all while swallowing his pride and remembering that Lily's future depended on this paycheck. That Thursday night had started like any other. Marcus had stayed late to prepare for tomorrow's presentation to Global Investments, a potential client whose business could pull Westbrook Financial back from the brink of collapse after a disastrous quarter. The company's survival, and the jobs of its 300 employees, hinged on landing this account. Just as Marcus was packing up to relieve Mrs. Patel, the elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school, his phone buzzed with a text from Richard: "Need help. Garage level B. Now." Marcus found his boss slumped against his Maserati, reeking of whiskey, barely able to stand. The presentation materials were scattered around him, and he'd apparently been sick on his custom suit. "I'm fine," Richard slurred, attempting to straighten his tie and failing spectacularly. "Just need to get home and sleep it off before tomorrow." Marcus felt a familiar surge of resentment. This was the man who had berated him in front of the entire office last week for being 5 minutes late after Lily's school bus had broken down. The man who had forgotten to approve his request for time off to attend Lily's school play. The man who made twice his salary in bonuses alone while Marcus struggled to afford Lily's asthma medication. For one tempting moment, Marcus considered walking away. Let Richard face the consequences of his actions for once. Let him drive drunk and get arrested, or worse. Let the company implode without tomorrow's presentation. Let someone else clean up this mess. But then he thought of Lily's smile that morning as she'd proudly shown him the drawing she'd made of the two of them. "That's us, Daddy. The best team ever." He thought of the 300 families who depended on Westbrook Financial for their livelihoods. He thought of his late wife Emma's voice in his head: "Your character isn't defined by how you treat people who deserve it, but by how you treat those who don't." With a resigned sigh, Marcus took Richard's car keys. "You're not driving anywhere tonight. I'm calling you an Uber, and I'll take these materials home to review before tomorrow." Richard's bloodshot eyes narrowed. "Who do you think you are? I'm fine to drive. Give me my keys." "No, sir. I can't let you do that." What happened next would replay in Marcus's mind for months to come. Richard lunged for the keys, lost his balance, and crashed into a concrete pillar. Blood immediately began streaming from a gash on his forehead. Marcus rushed to his side, pressing his own jacket against the wound while dialing 911 with his free hand. "Stay with me, Mr. Westbrook," Marcus urged as Richard's eyes fluttered. "Help is coming." The next few hours passed in a blur. The ambulance. The emergency room. Calling Richard's emergency contact, his sister Catherine, who lived 3 hours away. Explaining to Mrs. Patel why he was so late. Tucking an already sleeping Lily into bed with a whispered apology and a kiss on her forehead. It was nearly midnight when Marcus finally sat down at his kitchen table with the presentation materials. The doctor had assured him that Richard would be fine, a mild concussion and 12 stitches, but he'd be kept overnight for observation due to his intoxication level. Catherine was driving in but wouldn't arrive until morning. Which meant that Marcus was now responsible for the most important presentation in the company's history. He worked through the night, fueled by coffee and determination. Richard's notes were incomplete, his financial projections flawed. Marcus corrected errors, refined arguments, and completely restructured the approach based on his own research into global investments' recent ventures. By dawn, he had created something new, something better than what Richard had planned. As the sun rose, Marcus showered, dressed in his one good suit, and gently woke Lily. "Sweetie, Daddy has a very important meeting today. Mrs. Patel will take you to school, okay?" Lily rubbed her eyes sleepily. "Will you be home for dinner? You promised we'd make pizza." Marcus's heart clenched. He had promised. "I'll do my absolute best, Lillipad. And if I can't make it home in time, we'll have a special breakfast pizza tomorrow morning. Deal?" She considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Deal. But you have to try your hardest." "I always do, baby. I always do." Marcus arrived at the office early, his stomach in knots. He'd left messages for Catherine explaining the situation and offering to present in Richard's place, but hadn't heard back. The global investments team would be arriving at 10, and someone needed to lead the meeting. At 9:30, Catherine Westbrook strode into the office, impeccably dressed and radiating the same commanding presence as her brother. Marcus quickly briefed her on Richard's condition and the presentation. "I've reviewed everything and made some adjustments," he explained, handing her the updated materials. "I'm happy to walk you through it before they arrive, or I can handle the presentation if you prefer." Catherine studied him with shrewd eyes. "Richard mentioned you once. Said you were competent but lacked ambition." She flipped through the presentation. "He didn't mention you were a financial analyst before becoming his assistant." Marcus blinked in surprise. He'd never told Richard about his previous career, the one he'd abandoned when Emma got sick and he needed more flexible hours and better health insurance. "How did you?" "I do my research, Mr. Jenkins. Now, tell me why I should let you present to global investments instead of rescheduling." Marcus took a deep breath. "Because I know this material inside and out. Because I've been tracking Global's investments for months and have identified opportunities your brother missed. Because I have everything to lose if this fails, and so does everyone else who works here." Catherine's expression remained unreadable. "And if I say no? Then I'll support whoever you choose and do everything I can to help them succeed." A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Interesting." Richard would have threatened to quit. She handed the presentation back to him. "The room is yours, Mr. Jenkins. Don't make me regret this." The next 2 hours were the most intense of Marcus's professional life. He presented to the global investments team with a confidence he hadn't felt in years, fielding questions with ease and demonstrating a depth of knowledge that clearly impressed the potential clients. When he finished, their CEO, Elaine Winters, actually applauded. "Refreshing to see such thorough analysis," she remarked. "We'll be in touch very soon, Mr. Jenkins." As the global team departed, Catherine approached him. "My office. Now." Marcus followed her, mentally preparing for termination. He'd gone over Richard's head, essentially hijacked the presentation, and revealed his boss's embarrassing condition to a major client. Any one of those actions could be grounds for dismissal. Catherine closed the door behind them and took a seat behind Richard's desk. "Sit down, Mr. Jenkins." Marcus remained standing. "With all due respect, Ms. Westbrook, if you're going to fire me, I'd prefer to hear it on my feet." "Fire you?" She laughed, a sharp, startling sound. "Why would I fire the man who just saved this company? Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang, Lily's school. His heart dropped as he answered. Mr. Jenkins? This is Nurse Reyes. Lily had an asthma attack during recess. She's stable now, but you need to come pick her up and take her to her doctor. I'll be right there, Marcus promised, already moving toward the door. He turned to Catherine. I'm sorry, but my daughter. Go, she said simply. Family comes first. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. Marcus spent the rest of the day at the pediatrician's office and then at home with Lily, making the promised pizza for dinner and reading her extra stories at bedtime. His phone remained suspiciously quiet, no angry texts from Richard, no follow-up from Catherine. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but Lily's needs took precedence. The next morning, after ensuring Lily was feeling better and arranging for Mrs. Patel to check on her during the day, Marcus headed to the office, prepared for whatever consequences awaited him. He found Richard in his office, a bandage on his forehead, looking surprisingly sober and subdued. Catherine sat beside him, both of them reviewing documents that Marcus recognized as his presentation. Jenkins, Richard said, gesturing for him to enter. Close the door. Marcus complied, standing tall despite his racing heart. Mr. Westbrook, about the other night. Richard held up a hand. Catherine told me everything. How you prevented me from driving drunk. How you got me medical attention. How you stepped in for the presentation. He paused, visibly uncomfortable. And how you apparently impressed Global Investments enough that they called this morning to accept our proposal, with one condition. Marcus waited, confused. They want you to be their primary contact, Catherine explained. They were quite insistent. Richard cleared his throat. Which brings us to why we called you in. Catherine and I have been discussing the future of Westbrook Financial. I've come to recognize that I have some personal issues to address. What my brother is trying to say, Catherine interjected, is that he's checking into rehab today for 90 days, and we need someone to run the company in his absence. Marcus stared at them, certain he'd misheard. And you want my recommendation? Richard actually laughed. No, Jenkins. We want you to do it. The next hour was a blur of information. Richard was appointing Marcus as acting CEO during his treatment. His salary would triple immediately. He would have the authority to restructure departments, implement new policies, and essentially remake the company as he saw fit. But why me? Marcus finally asked. I'm just your assistant. An assistant with an MBA from Wharton who was on track to make partner at Deloitte before leaving to care for his wife, Catherine replied. Yes, we did our homework. Richard looked him in the eye for perhaps the first time in their 3 years working together. You could have left me in that garage. You could have let me destroy myself and this company. Most people would have. But you didn't. That says something about who you are. Marcus thought of Lily, of the opportunities this would create for her. No more struggling to pay for her medications. The ability to move to a better school district. College savings. I have one condition, he said firmly. I need flexibility for my daughter. She comes first, always. Done, Catherine agreed immediately. In fact, we're converting the unused office next to yours into a children's area. For days when school is closed or she's not feeling well. Richard extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Mr. Jenkins? As Marcus shook his boss's hand, he couldn't help but think of how differently things might have turned out if he'd made a different choice that night in the garage. If he'd walked away instead of helping. If he'd chosen resentment over compassion. One act of kindness, even to someone who hadn't earned it, had changed everything. 6 months later, Westbrook Financial was thriving under Marcus's leadership. Richard returned from rehab a changed man, supporting Marcus's vision rather than reclaiming control. Lily had her own special corner in the office, complete with books and art supplies, where she spent occasional afternoons helping Daddy with important business stuff. And on the anniversary of the night in the garage, Marcus received a small package from Richard. Inside was a set of keys, not to a car, but to a house. A note explained that it was in Lily's school district, 10 minutes from the office, with a backyard for her to play in and a study where Marcus could work from home when needed. The note read simply, "Some debts can never be repaid, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Thank you for saving more than just my life that night. Sometimes the greatest turning points come disguised as impossible choices. Sometimes the kindness we show to others, even those who may not deserve it, returns to us in ways we could never imagine. And sometimes, the simple act of doing what's right, even when it's difficult, can transform not just one life, but many." If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more powerful stories about how compassion and integrity can change lives in unexpected ways. Remember that your actions matter. You never know when a single moment of kindness might be the beginning of something extraordinary. "Congratulations, Mark," Victoria said as they left the building together. "I told them you were the right choice from the beginning." Even after the dinosaur text, he teased. "Especially after that." She took his hand as they walked. "It was the first honest communication I'd received in years." That night, after Emma was asleep, they sat on the balcony of Mark's apartment, the same spot where Victoria had first laughed for him. "I have something to ask you," Victoria said, uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been looking at houses. Something with a yard, close to Emma's school. With 3 bedrooms." Mark raised an eyebrow. 3? "One for us. One for Emma. And one that could be a dinosaur museum or library or whatever she wants." Victoria took a deep breath. "I'm asking if you and Emma would consider moving in with me. Not to my condo, to a real home. One we choose together." Mark studied her face, this woman who had entered their lives through